The next device I want to show you is one that I made up years ago, and this is really, really handy. It's just a heavy block, and I made it heavy to give it some weight and stability. And it's cut to accommodate a truss rod and the neck tenon. And then over on this end, I've just got a little cradle here that supports the neck, and it's adjustable up and down so that I can put that neck in there, and I can adjust that cradle down to support the neck just as that tongue sits right where I want it to be. And it just fell. What are we doing here? Okay, now we got it. And this, of course, it's always better if you clamp these things down, so I'm doing that right away. And this just makes fretting that tongue area easy to do and for a little ways down beyond the heel. Now, as I mentioned, I'll demonstrate doing this as if I was going to glue in my frets. And I'll talk about gluing those in for just a minute. If I glue frets in, I'm going to use common white glue. The reason is because it'll do the job. You really, I don't think, need anything more severe than that. Some people will use super glue, especially if you've got fret ends that don't want to stay down. You got to push them down, wick in the glue. I get that, and that could be necessary. But I stopped gluing the entire fret in with super glue because an experienced repairman told me that when the day comes that he has to refret my guitar, he'd make sure that I went to hell because they're so hard sometimes to get them back out. So when I'm doing this, when I'm doing the glue thing, what I will do on that board is take common paste wax. Don't care whose brand it is, doesn't matter at all. And I'm going to paste wax that board. And the reason is because I want to be able to wipe excess glue away as soon as I get a fret down. And some of it is going to come up out of there. It's just going to happen. So I get a little bit of it on there. I'm not afraid to put it right on, I guess. And I don't try to buff it off or anything of the kind. Just let it sit there. Just that simple. Got that done. So now, when I put a fret in, I'm going to take my fret, and this looks like it might be a little sloppy, but I've found this to be as good a method as there is. I just take a brush and I get some glue on that fret. Just brush it on there. And wipe it off with your fingers a little bit if you need to. Keep something handy to clean your fingers off, like your apron. And you're going to use your fret hammer, of course, whatever fret hammer you prefer. And you're going to set your fret in there. Bring it up a little closer. You're going to set your fret in. You're going to start at one end, never in the center. Start at one end and hammer your way across. And that fret should drop down in there and seat perfectly. Now, before you start any of this, you take a sheet of blue industrial paper towel, or rags if you prefer, doesn't matter. But I use a stack of these because I can use it and throw it away anytime I need to. And as soon as I've put that fret down home, I want to go back over that and wipe off that excess glue. And you see that wax helps keep that glue from, it's not that the glue is going to stick to the fingerboard, but it has moisture in it. And it won't now, the wax keeps it from imparting any moisture and creating any sort of discoloration. So I think that's real important. I'm going to do another one of those in case you might have missed anything on that. And I'll see if I can get you down a little bit closer, maybe to see what's going on there. So here we go, a little bit of glue, got the fret in my hand, and I'm just painting that glue on. I'm not being too particular because I got to wipe my fret off anyway. So here we go. It's not like we're trying to paint the windowsills. All right, wipe that off. I'm positioning my fret. And there we go. Start at one end. And drive them down. and watch them. Every time you put in a fret, watch closely. Wipe off your excess and check your progress. Make sure that your fret ends are seating. Now, what if they're not? What if they aren't? You may have to drip some super glue under that and put a clamp on there to hold that down. You can use these cauls that are made for a press or a drill press that you can press that with. That's one way of doing it. Or you can use a clamp if you have to. I'm sure there's a number of ways you can do it. I have the cauls on my drill press, but I don't like to use them for some reason. I find that a 16-inch caul matching a 16-inch radius doesn't always hit those fret ends all that hard. So I go to like a 12-inch caul to get those fret ends because it'll hit there harder. So that might be a leg up for you. So if I'm not using any glue in those frets, then of course I skip that whole step. And I just put the fret in position, starting at one end again and driving it down. And if that fret is fitting in there properly, you can feel that. There won't be any question about the fact that you're driving it home, but there won't be any question about the fact that it seats. You'll feel it hit bottom, and there it is. And you're good at that rate. So clipping these off. I should have clipped these off before, way down here on the board, because they're a little harder to get to, being so close together. But I'm just taking my fret cutters and I'm snipping those off. As I move up the board, I'll worry about that a lot less because I'll have more space to work in. So I should have been paying more attention right here. Okay, so I'm going to go off camera for a minute and then return showing you another device that I use to aid in installing these frets. I want to put in a little sidebar here. You'll notice that I have my neck nicely supported here, and I have driven frets all the way to the 13th fret, but I'm beginning to lose support underneath. If the neck is allowed to vibrate, flex, move in any way, it really negates the blow of the hammer because the kinetic energy is just wasted on the neck moving instead of the neck staying immovable and driving that fret down. So what I do is I've got a couple more to go here, but I put a block underneath the heel of my neck, and now I raise up my support at the other end a little bit, and I'm going to drive a couple of more frets because now I've got that support, but I'm only going to drive maybe 2 of them. And then I'm going to come to this device right here. This is just a block with a hollow cut in it, lined with cork to protect the neck, and this at each end here will be glued in position right where this device is, and I'll continue the fretting on that. All right, I have my frets all in, but what if you do have one that the end doesn't want to stay down? You have to have a solution. So I got a little low-tech thing that I do here. I kind of pointed a piece of dowel, good hardwood dowel, and I made a hollow in the end of that. Hope you can see this okay. And I just filed a hollow in that with a round needle file, easy enough to do. And where I have a loose fret end, I will hit that with a little bit of accelerator in advance, super glue accelerator. And by holding up against there and just taking a pipette and dripping your glue in there and holding pressure on that, you can get that fret end to glue in. And I like these little pipettes. I have more control with these than I do with a bottle of glue and the little spouts that you can get for them. So that works nicely. And if you've sprayed accelerator on there in advance, that's going to cure pretty quick. And it's just so easy to do. It's a lot easier than these ridiculous cauls and plier setups. There's a few of those around. And this tool also makes a nice way that you can go down through and push on those frets and check to see what's loose and what isn't. If you don't have a loose one, then you don't need to glue it in, but it's a good way to check them. So with my frets all in and clipped off and so on, now we have a bunch of sharp fret ends still sticking out here, and they've got to be smoothed down and brought down flush with the edge of that fingerboard. For me, this is a two-step process, probably is for most people. Um, my preference, my go-to first tool is a single cut smooth file, flat of course, and I have taken the trouble to cut off the tang and grind that round so that you can't get your hand into it and get hurt in any way. And of course, I don't want a handle on that file because it will interfere somewhere. It's going to get in the way of what you're trying to do. So this is a simple enough process. I'm sure you can imagine it's easy to do. Um, and I'm not worried about angles of any kind at this point. I just want to get those fret ends down flush with the edge of that fingerboard. And I hope you'll excuse the roar of the lawnmower outside. So uh, don't localize your strokes. Don't just work here and then work somewhere else. Uh, you can feel if there's a real high one where you might concentrate, but all you're doing is taking nice long strokes. This is really, it's just like jointing the edge of a saw before you refile the teeth. So simple enough. And I am doing a little extra down here because I can feel that these frets are a little bit more proud than the others. But there we go. This is just easy to do. And you'll feel it when everything comes down flush. You'll see the fret ends, you'll see little file marks in them, or you'll see them just shine. And you won't feel the file hitting against them any longer. There it is. I want to point out also, it's not terribly visible, but right here, I put a couple of layers of masking tape uh, on the neck so that if the file hits it, I'm not going to do any damage right there. So I'm going to repeat this on the other side and go to my second step. So I guess just for clarification here, this diagram may be helpful. What I've just done was clean these fret ends off, as you can see here in the green line representing the fret, the fingerboard, of course, and the neck in cross section. I've just kind of cleaned those off flush. What we're going to do now is change that flat edge or that flat end of the fret. We're going to bevel that back. That's not hard to do, but I thought the diagram might just clarify a little bit. There's a couple of ways you can do that, but I think the most consistent way, the way to get this to be a nice straight edge when you're done, is with this device. Now, this is a Slick Exotic Luthier's tool. There's no question about it. And you can pay big bucks for one if you want to at those places where you buy Slick Exotic Luthier's tools, or you can make your own. This happens to be a piece of high molecular weight polyethylene. All I did was I took one cut down through there at a 35-degree angle with a table saw. That leaves a kerf of 126 thousandths of an inch wide. This file slips right in there, slides in. I drilled and tapped 1/4 holes, and I put set screws in there. You don't need gorilla-like strength to hold all of this still, so it works really, really well. If you don't have this sort of material, I would not use any metal to do this, but you could use a piece of hardwood. And the hardwood may wear sooner than you'd like, but my recommendation would be if you made one of these out of hardwood, make it out of a non-porous hardwood, for example, maple, something that is not open grain, and something nicely dense. It could be anything, but make up about a 2.5, 3 foot strip of it all at once so that you can cut it off and make another one. And when that wears out, just grab another piece. You can drill even in that wood. You can drill and tap that. And if you pour super glue down in that hole just before you tap it, and then pour super glue in it again after you tap it, and then just run the tap through again. That'll be pretty durable in there. Not perfect, but pretty good. So with respect to technique, uh, you can lay this right against your fingerboard. Excuse the mower noise again. You can lay this right against your fingerboard and just hold that angle. Um, I tend to want to hold up just ever so slightly to keep this from rubbing against the frets, just a little bit. But I think that's a personal decision. And once again, tape so that I don't hit the neck. And here I do want good long full strokes. I don't want to localize much. And here you also want to watch the tongue of your fingerboard. If it's splayed up for any reason, you want to make sure you hold it down. If it's pushed down for any reason, maybe you've got a little bit of compression fretting going on here because this is unsupported, then push it up where it belongs. And you can do that just with your thumb. So I run down through with a few strokes. The backward stroke doesn't accomplish anything. The file doesn't cut in that direction, so I'm wasting my own time. There we go. And I'm seeing that nice, consistent facet form right there. Just what I want. And by the way, my work is suspended or supported, I should say, in the vise. And I just got a scrap block of MDF under it, anything to support that. But you got to have good support. Real important. Sorry again about that noise. I'm watching. Every time I take a stroke now, I'm looking to see the results that I've got. And I have found that sometimes after you do that, that will reveal the fret end a little bit sharp. And I can go back with my flat file and just brush that off slightly again. And I might even take that file and just turn that a half a degree even to get that to clean up nicely. That works nice. And you can see, whoops, you can see if you look straight down at these, you can see a little bit of a flat that has reappeared there. You can leave it. I think it's a matter of taste. And the flat that I'm talking about is extremely small. I hope you can see that. It's very small right there. And I don't mind the look of that, but I'm also going to do something else to those fret ends. So you bring that down the way you want it, and you sight down through there, sight down the neck, and make sure that all is nicely straight. That's very important as well. All right, so I've got that, I think, pretty much where I want it. I'm good to go for now, but I got one more technique that I'm going to apply. Now, there's an optional technique that you can use beyond beveling those frets. You can leave them beveled if you want to. But this is something that I saw way back when I was a kid. I watched the guys in the Martin Guitar Repair Shop doing this, and it just impressed the daylights out of me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to church door the ends of those frets, so to speak. There's probably files out there, you know, end dressing files of all kinds to do this work. But once again, I converted this to an official luthier's tool just by thinking it. What I did was I took a needle file like this one, just a flat file, but they have teeth on both edges. And I just ground the teeth off of one edge on a grinder and then took the time to hone that so that it's nice and smooth. And you just tape off your fingerboard as you see here. And what I do is I pick an angle that I like, and I put the smooth edge down and I count my strokes. 1, 2, 3. On to the next. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The tape, of course, protects the fingerboard. And you have to get ambidextrous with this, which I'm not. but I do my best. And when you get done, I don't know if I can get you in close enough to get a good look at that or not, but you get this nice little church door effect in there, which I kind of like that. That's just a real neat thing that you can do. Now, lastly, after all of that is done, there's nothing to stop you from taking some, this is a piece of 320, but you could use 400 grit silicon carbide. You can run down through there and just polish that right up. And this is the reason, again, I don't put a finish on my necks, because then I don't need to be concerned about working around that finish. But you can just polish that up and it gives you a nice fret end. Once I've completed all of that, my last step really is to check for level. And if there's any humps, low spots, whatever, then you may have to re-level your frets. I work very, very hard at a consistent radius in my fingerboard and a consistent thickness. I double check the flatness of my neck before I glue the fingerboard to it, and it all pays off in the end. I'm not feeling any obstructions. I've got no problems that I feel that I need to, that requires that I re-level any of these frets. So I'm very happy. But if there were any high spots or a serious dip or something some impropriety, then we would need to address that right away. But if there are none, or if you have made those corrections, the last thing I like to do uh, is to use these. Now, these are fret erasers. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these and you've seen them advertised. These things are, I will say, stupid expensive, but well worth every dime you pay for them. Years ago, before these came along, I was using little hardwood blocks with silicon carbide paper on them, and a little groove filed in them, and trying to do this. These things are just wonderful. So you start wherever you think is appropriate. I'm going to start here on these with 400 grit. And the object here is not just to polish the frets at this point, but if there's any little marks in them from manufacturing or anything like that, you can just run down through and clean those right up. And you can also bring the frets to a different level of sheen, whatever you prefer, because this is 400 grit, but these things top out at, here's one at 800 grit, and here's one at 1000 grit. So if you wanted to go through all of the steps, you could just have these frets so shiny and pretty. Or you could leave these at a more satin kind of look, whichever your taste or your guitar demands. And I think it's important too at that rate, because there are some guitars where you would want to tone those down just a little bit and leave them a little bit unrefined. So there you go. Once you've done all of that and you've made sure that your fingerboard is flat, then you're ready to install that, and or you're ready to put lacquer on it, finish it in whatever way you do, and finish up your guitar. Well, thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it informative and instructive. I want to reiterate a little bit. I showed you several devices and simple tools that I made or modified to do this job with, and I would encourage anybody to do that if you can. But do understand that if there are specific tools that are designed for this job, that these are the things that are required, by all means, you have to have them. Good case in point, this is to nip the tangs off the underside of a fret when you're doing a bound fingerboard. There's no substitute for that. You're probably not going to make it up, so don't be afraid to buy what you need. But don't overthink the process. Fretting is not all that difficult. And if you're new to this and you're uncertain about it, I really recommend that you just take any scrap, good, dense, hard wood, and even if you don't put a radius on it, cut some slots in it, even if they're at random, and try it a few times until you get the hang of it. You can make it work, and you can make it work very, very well for yourself. So once again, thanks a lot. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I sure would appreciate that. And once again, I do read the comments, and I try to answer as many of them as I feel I can. So feel free to ask questions and make comments. I appreciate those very much. Thanks again. See you next time.